But democracy basically is real democracy. Democracy in this country, as we think it exists, is a guy knocks on your door every 4 or 5 years and say, "Can I have the vote?" You say, "Well, what are you offering? What are you promising?" He goes, "Well, we won't pay back the bondholders, and we won't do this and we won't do that." And then they get into government and they do it. And then what can we do as a country? Nothing. We have to give out in bars and pubs and as we stand on the street and give out about everything. And I've done all my marching and I've done all my giving out, and it seems like nobody's listening. and it's frustrating. Nobody's listening. So myself and John Squire is here. I'm just an electrician. He's just a plasterer. We decided to take a court case against the government. And when I went into the High Court, now we fund this, by the way, just from donations from people. And a lot of the donations even come from America. I don't know if you watch some of the YouTube videos that we put up where we actually serve the papers. You should read through some of the comments, although some of them are negative because they don't understand. Like a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you've got your loan, pay it back. That's contract law." You know, I can't keep answering everybody, so I just try to explain, look, I know what's going on. So I understand when people say, "Well, I'm not paying his mortgage." See, this is what a lot of people say, "I'm not paying his mortgage." See, you don't have to pay his mortgage. Everything should be on an individual basis. See what a guy can really afford, because you do have to separate the won't pay from can't pay, you know. So everything should be on an individual basis. But the truth about the matter is that if a guy gets evicted, then we are paying his mortgage. Because when he gets evicted, he becomes socially housed. And then we all pay his mortgage. And that's the fact. I think the bank should take up the loss on anybody's mortgage where they cannot afford it. I mean, I had a woman come to me and she was so distraught about, she was still paying her mortgage, but only for she had 2 packets of sausages in the fridge that week, that's what she fed her kids on. I mean, that's, you know, when you see what they did, and you see the proud Irish people, the extremities they go to pay their mortgage, really appalls me, because they fed on our honesty for it. And that's what really, really bothers me, you know. So direct democracy then gives power back to you. That's really what it does. And Ray will talk in detail a good bit about it, but I'll just give you the cartoon version of it. That if we had direct democracy, what it does, and we used to have it in our first constitution, by the way, they took it out. See, when we were asleep or drinking that fluoridated water or something, they took it out and nobody noticed. It went missing on us. And direct democracy basically is, if you gathered, I think it was 75,000 votes, am I right in saying that? 75,000 votes. Now I could get 75,000 votes over a weekend, because I would set up a table in Galway, say Limerick, Dublin, Cork, wherever, and get 75,000 votes. And all I would have to put on it is, do you think we should pay bondholders or foreign gamblers with our sovereign money of this country? Do you think we should sell off our fishing rights and national assets to pay back these gamblers? I mean, I say no, I don't know, but I think I would get 75,000 votes. And then I think that once I got to 75,000 votes, that allows me to call a referendum. Now, I don't know, but I think if a referendum was called and they decided to do this crazy thing about paying these gamblers, I'm not sure that would have been passed. I think I would have won that. So if this government are in power to serve us, why are they ignoring the want of the people? Or if they're unsure, why don't you just call a referendum and then say, well, the people decided, Ben, and you're wrong. Then I'll accept that. I'll accept that. But we do not have democracy. What we have is a government who goes into power and works for foreign corporate banks and gangsters and fraudsters, and they work for them, and they will do their utmost to keep us in the dark, or to shut us up, or to keep us off RTE, as they always do with me, or just whatever it is they can do. And then 5 years later, they'll come back and ask for your vote again. And that's why I haven't voted. And I know people say, as an Irishman, you know, a vote's an important thing, and blah, 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 blah. I agree with all that. But I'm not going to be part of the con. So with direct democracy, if we had left that in our constitution, What it leads to is better government and governing of our finances and stuff like that. Because what it does is that if we, say I was in the Fianna Fáil government and we got Fianna Fáil out, but of course they would have never paid back the bondholders in the first place, okay, because it was direct democracy. But say when we went in and we were Fine Gael and I said, what do you think, will we continue paying back these bondholders? Well, someone at the table is going to say, well, you better not, because they're just going to call a referendum, and then that's not going to be passed. So now I have to think of a better way. I actually now have to do the work I'm paid for, instead of the Troika telling me what to do. Because I can even say to the Troika, look, I can tell you, yeah, no problem, we'll pay you back, but when the people have to say, they're going to tell you where to go. And they're going to tell you in no uncertain terms. So that's what direct democracy does. It's like a police force of the government, and you can't do crazy stuff. But as I say, Ray will come up now, and he will give you a more insight into how it works so perfectly. Thanks for your attention. We will hang around afterwards to take questions and stuff like that. Democracy Ireland.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Raymond Whitehead, and I'm from Dublin. I set up an organisation 3 years ago called Direct Democracy Ireland, and it came out of, like Ben and I'd say all the people here, a sense of anger and frustration at what was happening in this country, and the sense of hopelessness and helplessness that I felt, that I had no say in my own country's future. And I had lived in Switzerland for 4 years as a student, almost 40 years ago now. And it left a lasting impression on me. Switzerland is what is called a direct democracy. And I knew nothing about politics then, and knew just as much about politics up to a couple of years ago, until I woke up and started asking questions about what I could do to try and change things, because I just felt I can't stand back and do nothing. And I'm not anybody, I'm not a known person, I'm unemployed at the moment. But I just couldn't stand by and do nothing. And I saw what the power the people of Switzerland have, the average person in Switzerland has, when I was there. And it left this lasting impression on me. And the sense I had, and I was in my early 20s, when I went there, and it was palpable, was when you walk down the street in a village or a town in Switzerland, you have this sense that the people, the ordinary people of that street who were walking down the street, they owned that street. That was their street. And they had a sense of ownership of their town, of their village, because they had a direct say in everything that happened. Anyone in that town could call a referendum locally to change something. And if enough people agreed with them, that became law, and that's what the local politicians had to do in order to effect whatever change the people decided. So the politicians, locally and nationally, were servants of the people at the end of the day. Now, they do have a representative democracy like we have, where they elect politicians to do a job. But in the same way that you might elect somebody to do a job in your house, you don't just let him get on with it and do whatever he wants for the next, until the job is finished. If he's doing something you don't like, you can hire him, you can fire him, or you can tell him what you want. I don't want it done this way, I want it done that way. You're paying the bills, you're the people who are paying his wages, and we're the people who are paying the wages of the politicians. We deserve to have a say. If we can hire them, we can fire them. We should be able to. In Switzerland, they have that. It's called direct democracy. They've had it for 150 years. And it works very well, thank you very much. Now, a friend of mine, I was talking to him about it the other day, and he gave an example of his experience in Switzerland, and it just highlighted exactly what I was saying about the average person. This is 35 years ago. He said he happened to be in Switzerland on a visit, and he was waiting for a friend in a small town, small village. And he was sitting in his car with the engine running, waiting for his friend. And a woman who was passing by just knocked on the window and said to him, "Would you mind turning off your engine you're polluting the air in the street. Now this is 35 years ago, long before the Green Party or eco this or eco that. There was that sense of the quality of life that these people had and enjoyed in Switzerland. And anyone who goes to Switzerland will realise that you can practically eat your dinner off any street in Switzerland. It is spotless, everything works, everything goes on time, their economy is a strong economy, and they are a rich country. Now, this is one of the objections that people often put up against direct democracy. They say, oh, the Swiss are rich, they can afford to have referendums every month or every whatever. They have about 10 referendums a year. They can afford that. But actually, they're not rich. They don't have direct democracy because they're rich. They are rich because they have direct democracy. Because the people have a direct say in everything that happens in their community and in their country. And I'm quite sure that there are lots of people here who know where the massive wastes are in their communities, where money is being abused and flushed down the toilet. And we've seen it here, Ben has outlined it, where regulations have been abused, money has been flushed down, 5 billion a day according to that chap, in his institution alone. So where people are engaged and involved in their own communities and have a sense of ownership, that waste doesn't happen. I remember seeing last year headlines in the national newspaper. I'm sure some people probably will remember it. There were a couple of headlines, one after the other. One was 1,400 euros to change a light bulb in a Garda station. Headlines. Another headline was 16,000 euro to put, I think it was a shower in a council office or something. These are the kind of massive wastes. These are just small examples of local wastes of money that can be multiplied by 1 million when it comes to what happens at governmental level. And as Ben said, we stand by and look at this helplessly. We have no say. Now, in Switzerland, people can, as we could under our first constitution in 1922, get 100,000 signatures in Switzerland to call a national referendum on anything. And in 1922, the founding fathers of the Irish Free State gave the people of Ireland the power of referendum to guard against the very abuses of power that we've seen decade after decade after decade in this country. It's become endemic at this point. Now, the founding fathers of the Irish Free State were intelligent men. If we had kept that power of referendum, we would not be the product and the victims of these abuses that we see today. We could step in and say, no, we're not paying bond holders. In fact, we would never be in that position in the first place. It would probably never have arisen. We'd have a country like Switzerland where everything works and everything is geared towards quality of life for the people of that country and not towards the quality of life of an elite group of people. Now, Switzerland, Ireland, an example of the efficiencies that the Swiss enjoy because of direct democracy are that Ireland has in the EU the highest level of money paid for services in the EU. 60% of our GDP goes on services. And what have we got to show for it? And we all know the outcome of it. We have a health system that's not fit for purpose, people lying on trolleys, dying on trolleys. And I've been down there with members of my own family as well. We have crime levels that are on the increase. We have so many problems in this country, many of which could be solved if we as citizens had that sense of empowerment and ability to bring about change in our own communities and in our own lives, and nationally and locally. 60% of our GDP goes on services, and we've 40% left over to spend on whatever else, which is not much. The lowest spend in Europe, and they're not in Europe and they're not in the euro,